With the most recent chapter of Fairy Tail 100 Years Quest, Chapter 205, we are seemingly beginning to get set up for the next section of the story, which could very well be the finale of 100 Years Quest, based on how things are progressing at this point in the story. Obviously, if you're not caught up with the manga, please leave the video, because I don't want to spoil you guys more than the thumbnail in the video. Now that aside, the most recent chapter of 100 Years Quest basically ended with the full-on defeat of Natsu. Him using the same move that helped him in the fight against Acnologia at the end of the original series, getting completely decimated by a now Acnologia-esque amped Ignia, with the spirit of Faris still lingering in his consciousness, kind of advising him or just keeping him company in this instance. But when it came to the end of that chapter, and that chapter as a whole, Ignia's whole reaction to Aldoron's basic kamikaze-esque FU to Ignia for kind of using him for his grand master plan, ended up kind of making Ignia a lot more enthusiastic, about a lot better than what his original plan was. Now, his original plan for this brand new Dragon King's Festival was to essentially use Doggermonk's roots that he had planted after his initial defeat from Eleftheria over 400 years throughout the continent of Giltina, store a bunch of magic power and drain it from the other dragon gods, and then essentially revive the dragon gods with a brand new spell, giving them access to their true full power, and having massive dragon lacrimas being the cause of draconification for different people in certain sections of Giltina, with Aldoron being the main center point of the spell, with the roots connecting to his body, allowing him to create a giant spell of Universal Mega to turn basically the entire continent into dragons. Now, Ignia doesn't like humans too much, but he does acknowledge their own strengths and does view most of them to still need to be around, but wants to give them the gift of being dragons, the superior species in his eyes. Well, based on how broken dragons are in Fairy Tail, I don't blame him. But, you know, superiority complex and all that stuff. The spell was getting ready to activate literally in the last seconds of the fight against Aldoron and Selene, but Natsu, with his new Dragon King mode, managed to stop Aldoron and just basically dismantle his entire body relatively easily with his brand new flames. But at the end of the fight, after getting beat by Selene at the end of the day with the finishing blow, Aldoron uses his magic, since him and Doggermogs were fused, to kind of think in that instance that he was going to ruin Ignia's plans, and kind of use those roots going throughout the entire continent, and use Universal Mega through that to not turn the people into dragons, but to just turn the entire damn continent into dragons. Like, we had the clouds surrounding Giltina were looking like dragons, as not just general rocks, formations, and trees. They were all changing into the shape of dragons and rising into the sky as they seemed to be turning into flesh and blood dragons. And this caught Ignia's eye, as while he was confused at first, he realized that at the end of the day, Aldoron just did his job in a much more compelling way. Because Ignia's goal shifted more towards, yeah, he wants the world of dragons, but a bit more toward just destruction of everything else. And Aldoron basically fed into that. He decided to just turn this entire continent into dragons because he thought it would screw up Ignia's plans, but it just ended up being a better version, or according to Ignia, revised version of Universal Mega. And this leads to Ignia thinking that this is going to be a now new dragon world, where dragons are going to be the apex predators, are going to be ruling over the world like they used to centuries ago. And that's where I think this next arc is going to be. Now, we have no official confirmation on, obviously, this coming up being the next arc, but with Natsu getting a power-up and then losing to a amped-up Ignia with Acnologia's powers, with the continent literally shifting around him, there is a strong possibility that we are getting into a new arc. And what makes this more likely is that we still have, obviously, not just Ignia, but the Calamity Bloods still needing to do something. And our main groups, the main group of Fairy Tail, will have Saria and Loxus, and we have Fairy Tail Team B and the Irrational Sext in their own area where Aldoron's remains were, getting separated by these dragons coming out from the ground. So, what could this end up being? Well, this could just end up being one massive boss rush, essentially, for different Fairy Tail members. Now look, I've already made a video talking about the Calamity Bloods and why they kind of have this big issue of, coming after two main villain groups introduced in the same arc with build-up and hype, but then them being relatively, disappointing, or just, in the terms of Fire and Flame, completely pointless at the end of the day because they didn't do really anything at all. I'm still salty about that, by the way. with the Irrational States having a better showing in comparison, but I guess that's just because they weren't fighting the main characters of this spin-off. But that aside, we have our main groups. Calamity Bloods still haven't really shown their stuff, and everybody got separated. So this could set up for a basic island dragon type thing. I don't remember where I saw this from. I know Frieren had this in their manga. I don't know if it happened in the anime yet. I haven't watched season 2 just yet. But either way, there in some fictional stories, there are like dragons that are so big that have islands and ecosystems on their back. So what Aldoron's spell could do is basically set up just these giant ecosystems where humans are still there, along with other wild animals and stuff like that, but the Calamity Bloods are kind of dominating and ruling over them, with the possibility of these dragon-esque nations and islands and stuff like that forming from Giltina, overrun with other dragons, or just the Calamity Bloods killing all humans and stuff like that, going to cross the world. And the only ones that can stop the Calamity Bloods and later Ignia are our main characters. And since this does actually set us up for like a type of boss rush thing with different characters, hopefully different characters team up in this instance, like a good mix of characters that in some instances have never met or never really fought together, it is a unique opportunity for Majima. Now, I know a lot of people are very negative over everything. I have been relatively negative for the most part in some aspects of how the story has been told in this arc over the last year, but I still maintain just how much potential Fairy Tail and Hero's Quest does have, and right now, this is probably the biggest amount of potential we have gotten right now. With different living areas and ecosystems on top of giant living dragons created from the continent, people scattered throughout these different areas of dragons, if that is the direction we're going towards, it doesn't just give the Irrational Sace and Fairy Tail Team B and our main team of Fairy Tail access to do stuff. We still have Diablos, who has not been present for damn near 100 chapters, and they need to do shit. And we still have Athena still needing to actually, be present in the story outside of Gold Owl. She has not done anything since she got back her body after the initial self-sacrifice or whatever. So, the possibility is still there. We have a bunch of characters that were introduced in 100 Years Quest, and returning characters from the main series alongside of our main cast. And while, yes, a lot of these characters don't really have any real character arcs to really go on, for the most part, it would still be really cool if, with this ensuing chaos, we get really cool and unique matchups of characters that have not really fought together at all, or in terms with the Irrational Sace coming in, some of them fought other characters so that they could end up being reluctant teammates, or something like that. You have a bit of personal drama against Calamity Bloods, but either way, Dragon Slayers are going to be on each and every team, obviously. It would be fun and unique if there was just one Calamity Bloods team fighting together that had no Dragon Slayers, except for Urza with her Dragon Slayer enchantments and stuff like that, and Dragon Slayer seal. But even then, that would be really damn cool to see, and that would end up having to be a bit more creative in this instance if we just had Urza with any Dragon Slaying properties, while the other real Dragon Slayers are just spread out through all these different locations. Now, I still maintain my stance that all the main Dragon Slayers of the original series should each fight the dragons that they could not beat during the Grand Magic Games Dragon King Festival section when Future Rogue brought those dragons back. Like, I want Sting and Rogue to come back into this arc so they can fight the dragons that they couldn't beat. I want Cobra to beat the dragon that he couldn't beat. Natsu's out of the count, but Urza has been seemingly set up to fight off against Mother Glare. Gagio takes on the dragon that he couldn't beat. Like, these are generational get-backs that essentially are something that I think we all need to see. Because having our Dragon Slayers fight off against dragons they could not beat makes a lot of sense. And I do think that it will be a nice bookend to their whole journey as Dragon Slayers. Because, yeah, they teamed up to beat acnologia, and Sting and Rogue did help in terms of defeating Viernus, but they just gave power to Natsu so he would fight him one-on-one. But even then, I do feel like this would be a nice, conclusive way to have all our Dragon Slayers slay a freaking dragon. That's why I do think Loxus should help Urza against Mother Glare so that he has an actual opponent, because Zirconis is dead, so he doesn't have a dragon to get back at. And Wendy can help out with anybody else that needs enchantments. Maybe Gagio and Wendy can team up again, because that feels like a really nice team up, because like I enjoyed Endless at the end when the final fight was just the 3 Dragon Slayers fighting off against the literal dragon mech. That was a lot of fun to watch and read. But everything could be like a ticking time bomb, where perhaps now we have to take down all the Calamity Bloods and find some way to reverse this dragonification of a literal continent before these new, like, maybe island-sized dragons or city-sized dragons end up going over across the world, causing a bunch of destruction and devastation with Ignia at the helm. And Natsu will have to come back with potentially a brand new power-up, new powers, new way to take down Ignia with acnologia powers and black magic. Again, everyone's thinking that it's END. END's probably coming back at this point. Natsu already has all his dragon powers from Ignia back. Maybe he just needs to fully master him like a mini training arc or some shit like that. But at this point, it really feels like we're setting us up for Natsu to have his dragon and demon powers that he initially had and kind of gave up in terms of those seeds and turning into either. And to find a way to have like a perfect melding of these two abilities so that he can be of an equal match against Ignia at the end of the day. But that's just my whole speculation on how this could pan out. This could be a really fun final arc, depending on how much like tension is built up with it. It's because like an entire continent's being turned into dragons, our main cast's been separated, there's still a group of powerful dragons, and Natsu was defeated by, right now, the actual main antagonist of the story. And there's still the possibility, I didn't mention it, that Faris could probably steal away control of Ignia's body because her consciousness is still around. So that is a possibility as well. But either way, this could be a really fun finale for Frontier's Quest. Because yeah, we took out the dragon gods. Selene is probably out of energy. She'll probably help in a fight against Ignia at the end of the day, probably dying, for all we know. But again, this just has a lot of potential to be like a really fun, like, end of days type arc, where everyone is just separated, having to fight their own opponents in like random mashed up teams between Team B, Team A, a fairy tale, the Ration Seis, and the Diablos, with Athena sprinkled in there. Same with Selene sprinkled in one of these in some way, shape, or form. While Natsu has to have his next fight against Ignia with potentially a mastery of END plus his Dragon King powers. Either way, these are just my thoughts on what this whole next section of the story can end up being. Obviously, I could be entirely wrong, and it can go into an entirely different direction that will probably be just as good, or it'll probably be, like, relatively mediocre. I got no clue. Again, I'm here for the ride. I still enjoy the series. There are still fun moments. It's still fun to read, despite some frustrating writing choices that I have to be honest with. But either way, let me know your thoughts and opinions in the comment section down below. What you think this next section of the story is going to end up being like, and how would you set up for a final arc for this series and how it would make sense. Let me know in the comment section down below. And if you haven't already, like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for updates on future videos. Really helps, and it shows you guys enjoy the content I make here on the channel, and shows you want to see more. And also don't forget to hype up the video to help boost it in the algorithm to show it to more people like yourselves. And with all that said and done, I hope you all have an awesome day.